Double P podcast. Double P.
What I like to call
Double P.
What I like to call
Double P podcast.
Welcome to Irish Craic, a review and recap of the television series Dublin Murders by an American and an Aussie. My name's Bubba. With me, as always, is somebody who is willing to get his nose pierced for his job. It's Bagga. Bagga, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Bubba, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
Still a bit sore from where I got it pierced. I had to see what it felt like.
Right. Well, you're doing that to look like Lexie. My hairline's receding so I can look like Frank. We are really getting into Dublin Murders as this week we talk about episode 5 of this first season, season 1. And really interesting episode. Once again, I was so high off last week's episode, not quite as high. But before I give my rating out of 10, Bagga, what is your rating out of 10 for this episode 5 of season 1?
I think you gave a bit higher score than I did last week. But this week, I'm going full on 10, what I like to call KK.
Double Ks?
Double K. Katy killed.
She was.
There was a lot of times during this episode that I actually forgot about that case and was so busy thinking about the case with the 3 young kids and the situation with Rob and how he's collapsing basically emotionally and now with Cassie going off on her case. And yeah, there were times that I actually even forgot that it was supposed to be about Katy being killed and, you know, they were supposed to be solving that case. But it's like it's turned into, let's find out what happened in 1985 more so than what happened to Katy.
Bagga, let me say that you are so wise. So many things you have said over these podcasts. In hindsight, somebody's going to go, oh boy, what a really smart comment. So 10 out of 10, you really dug it. Was there one particular scene or just the mood of what the hell happened in 85 that got your ranking so high?
I don't think there was one particular scene. I think it just seemed like scene after scene after scene. Every time I think, oh, they can't follow that scene, this next scene is going to have to drop down a bit, it would go a bit harder and something else would happen. And it was just like all the way through. I don't think there was a dead spot in the entire episode. I thought it was just brilliant.
Well, that is great. I felt that way similarly, but I am only going to give this a ranking of 7, what I like to call double Ds out of 10.
Double D?
Yeah, well, that here in the States, when you get pulled over by the cop, that's when you're dealing with Detective Dickweed. And Rob this week was Detective Dickweed. 7 out of 10 because it's very intriguing. Maybe as we always point out, the second storyline of the likeness of the imitation Lexie still feels like it hasn't taken off yet, and I'm ready to dive into that story. But Detective Rob is being a dickweed. He should be pulled from this case. He never should have been on the case. And he is spiraling down oh so much. Now, what is great in some ways, listeners, if you're somehow new to Irish Craic here, I always like to point out that this television series is based on 2 different books in a book series by the author Tana French. I have read the first book that is the Katy Devlin, a.k.a. 1985 case entitled In the Woods. I haven't read the second book, which is the imitation Lexie novel entitled The Likeness. And so the stuff with Katy Devlin, the In the Woods murder, as I like to call it, this episode really gives you a feeling of the book, of the novel, in that at a certain point in the novel, this really becomes almost entirely about Rob and his psyche and what the hell he's going through and what is he thinking. And so I love that the series is able to recreate this, but it is missing one important point, and that is the novel is narrated by Rob, Adam, young Adam, old Rob. He's the focus. He's telling us the story. We're in his head. And when he's doing some of these absolutely dickweed moves, in the novel, you can at least, because it's his thought process, you're easier able to forgive some of these terrible things. In this episode, it was really good. Maybe 7 is too low, but because we couldn't be in his head, I wonder how many viewers are going to be like, why am I watching this show about such an unappealing, mean dickweed, Rob/Adam?
I do remember when I sat down and started to read the book, and I think I got about 10 pages before I stopped. He did say that he lies, and if he's an unreliable storyteller, it makes it a bit hard to believe what he's actually writing about.
Great point. Oh, my goodness, Bagga. Always saying so many interesting things. We're going to dive into this episode, but right at the top, listeners, we are part of Double P Media. You can reach out to us. Join us on Twitter and Instagram at Double PHQ. That's the word double, the letter P, single P, then the letters HQ for headquarters at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. Subscribe to the podcast. Get in. We do this because we love feedback. And let's get to some of this feedback right at the top. We got a tweet from Nick Fortuna, who's at Nicholas Fortuna. And Nick's tweet said, I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit lost about Dublin Murders. I can't wait to hear the podcast. Maybe it will clear some things up for me. Well, what do you think, Bagga? Have we cleared up anything or made it even worse?
I think we're going to end up making it worse.
We're worse than Rob.
I think what I'm going to talk about and what you're going to talk about are probably going to be two completely different things, or just two completely different views. It is very confusing at this stage. It
is. We got in a Twitter kind of conversation, and I'm going to read all of them. First, from Paula_Guthat. That's Paula_GUTHAT. She tweeted to us. She said, I gotta say Rosalind Devlin is emerging as my most likely suspect. I would give it a 50-50 chance is what Paula says, but then she says no spoilers, please. And even though I have read the book, and there's a good chance that the show will have the same resolution that the book has, we try not to give any spoilers. I don't believe we do. So that was Paula's comment.
I hadn't thought of Rosalind.
Right, well, okay, Becky Delgado67 replied to this, and Becca said, Rosalind is a good choice, but I was leaning more towards her father until episode 4. Now I'm wondering about Rob. Dun, dun, dun. Then Paula responded and said, you can't rule out Rob. Dad Devlin, a.k.a. Jonathan Devlin, still looks sketch to me, but for possibly the other murders, meaning those missing kids from the 80s.
Yep.
Call, or Cahal, however you say this, is shady AF as well. Then you got Damien, the archaeology student. Ooh-wee. About the only one I do not suspect is Miss Fitzgerald, but she could be handy with a poison scone. That's the neighborhood crone. Love it.
Yeah, the one that knows everything. Oh, that's some interesting theories there. Rosalind, I hadn't thought of Rosalind. And Damien, interesting.
Very interesting. Listeners, once again, join us in these dark, dark woods, in these foggy Irish mornings at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. So, Bagga, you said in this episode, episode 5, that you occasionally forgot about Katy. And I wonder if that's possibly because we've spent 5 hours looking at this case. Do you have any motive as to why any suspect would have killed Katy?
My first motive I had was something to do with her father insofar as sexual fantasy gone wrong or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But after last week, after he had that fight with Carl and he was so upset that his daughter was dead, I've written that off as pretty sure he didn't do it. I mean, he might be a reason that she was killed. It might be something to do with the highway, freeway, whatever it is that's being built that he's trying to stop. But I don't think he was actually in on the killing. Although he is, I must admit, he is a very suspicious character.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if there's anything going on between him and Simone, the dance teacher. It seemed just a little bit friendly to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, she kind of defended him today when Rob, as I call him, the double D dickweed detective, was saying, have you had any suspicions that the daughters had been sexually abused by their father? Oh, my God. Just come out and say it, Rob. But, of course, This Simone, the ballet teacher, the dance teacher, she said no. So did she say that because of ulterior motives? Good thought.
Well, she would say no if she was having an affair with the dad, because she wouldn't want to put any pressure on Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. Is it a red herring that Jonathan just looks so suspicious all the time? Or is there something more to it?
That is one of the questions that this show wants you to be asking. And could it be? Let me say that, once again, I'm just throwing out possibilities. But we see that Rob is really messed up all these years later, 2 decades later from what happened back in 1985. And what's interesting is now we saw a really disturbing scene that Katy's father participated in. And is it possible ever since then he's been a bit messed in the head? Because, yeah, he doesn't come across as right.
Are we talking about the scene in the forest?
Yes, we are. Or I was. I mean, could it be this? Could it be that? If this was an Agatha Christie novel, murder mystery that you'd have to solve, there'd be a lot of motives out there. Like, this person would inherit the money. This person hated him because he was swindled earlier. You know, like, there are a lot of motives. And what's interesting in this Katy Devlin case, I think to an outside viewer, when you come to motives, you have to think, well, perhaps it's this, perhaps it's that. There hasn't been one stated as, you know, like you could say perhaps it's that her father was fighting this motorway through the town, through the village, and they needed to shut him up and get him distracted. But that's all speculation. Nobody's even hinted at that.
And it's all confusion because the story keeps going back to the 1985 situation with the 3 kids. And every time they start to do something about Katy's death, Rob usually somehow turns it around to, what were you doing in 1985? It's like he's obviously more intent on finding out that than he is about Katy's death.
Oh, amen. You're absolutely right there.
And there was one thing I want to bring up.
Sure.
There's a scene where Jonathan and Carl are flirting with Maggie, or Margaret.
Yes, who later becomes Jonathan's wife, a drugged-out wife.
Yeah, and then Adam's dad comes out and gives him some candy, and Adam says, I can't have that because I'll have a black mouth and Mum would tell me off. Dad says, keep your mouth shut about women, then you won't have to lie. And then as they move off, the camera just lingers on the dad's hand on the back of Adam for 10, 15 seconds. I'm not sure exactly how long, but it's like, is there more? Is there something happening there? Or is that another red herring? I mean, it's almost like...
Well, something had to have happened there. I think something had to have happened there because later we flash forward to England in 2003, and Rob's dad is dying, and his mom's like, hold his hand, help him, be with him as he goes into the next world, as he passes on. And Rob wouldn't hold his hand. So, yeah, is it possible Rob's dead dad had something to do with those disappearances back in 85? Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, it's interesting. I couldn't work out whether, because Rob is still angry with his mum about being left in England in the boarding school.
Yeah.
Is he still upset with his dad for the same reason, or did his dad do something to him that we haven't found out about yet that made him not want to take his hand and look away rather than look at his dad's dying face? So, very tense.
Very tense. I mean, I'm so tense. Bagga, what I think when I see this scene is because Adam/Rob can't remember what happened at all, I start thinking to myself, is this Candy drugged? Like, is that why he passed out and couldn't remember anything? Like, my antenna for suspicion is way up.
Yeah. Well, you look at everything, don't you? Like everything, even the scones. You know, is there something in the scones that before you know it, the show's gone on for 15 minutes and nobody's even mentioned Katy.
Right.
It's all been about the three kids, and Rob keeps going back to the forest looking, but then too scared to go in, or starts to go in, then runs off, and very confusing. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was Jonathan Devlin. Why has he moved his family to the caravan?
Great question. Now, theoretically, if I remember last week's episode correctly, two things kind of happened at the same time, meaning that he was already going to move his family to the caravan, but then he got a call from Call, asking about if his wife, Margaret, was going to stick to the story back in 85. So it wasn't that suddenly 85 is getting brought up that he throws his family out to the caravan trailer park there at the ocean. It seems like he was doing it possibly because earlier in the episode he had seen Rob talking to Rosalind and Jessica, and he was like, I don't want the cops talking to him. Get the hell out. Move him away where the cops can't find him.
Yeah, it could be. But I do have to say that if you're going to build a caravan park somewhere,
yeah,
do you think that would have to be the worst possible place to have built one? It's a shocker. It's like, I don't know how many caravans there are there, but it looks like there's hundreds. And there's basically no beach. It's all rocks. There's nothing to see.
How about this? Do they really have plumbing? It's community showers.
Yes, exactly. Now, as a kid, just to go off the story a little bit, when I was very young, we used to go down to a caravan down near the beach quite a way away and stay with some cousins and stuff. And they did have a communal shower there. And I usually, because I was only like about 8 or 9, I didn't bother. It was warm. We used to go in the water, all that sort of stuff. And one morning I thought I felt a bit dirty, so I'd go there. And I walked in, I had a look, and there was no curtains. It was just all open. And I just turned around and walked straight out again. I wasn't staying there. So I don't know how Rosalind, maybe they're used to it. This idea of just going into a communal shower like that and only have a shower curtain is pretty freaky.
Okay, well, now I want to tell my story. Apologize, listeners. We're going to be off Dublin Murders for another couple of minutes. But when I was a kid, now we did it. There were community showers, but we would have these family reunions at this place called Fontana Dam. And it's cabins out in the woods, and you think, oh, that's so cute. But the story behind the cabins was that this dam was built in 1942. And they built some temporary, I want to underline the word temporary cabins for the people working and building the dams. Well, these cabins never exactly fell down, and they turned it into a campground. And so my family would go to this thing, and of course, obviously, it's 50 years past the time it was built, and you're like, why are we here? This is a vacation resort? This thing's falling apart.
Well, we used to stay where the caravan was. Let's just say there wasn't electricity at the time. There was electricity on the road going alongside where all the caravans were, but back then they didn't have any sort of coming into the caravan area. Yeah, it was pretty bad, really, when I think about it now.
Well, let me say Margaret and Jessica Devlin would never stay at those caravans. They need electricity so they can watch their TV shows absent-mindedly.
Yes.
I was asking you about motives because, once again, at least on this In the Woods case, I can't say too much because of fear that I might spoil something. So instead I thought, well, what could I add to this part of the television show discussion? And one thing, when you're looking at a murder mystery, one thing you have to know is, are there enough clues out there for the audience to solve it? Can the audience, based on these 5 episodes, solve who killed Katy, why Katy was killed, how Katy was killed, all these things? And I'll say right now, I don't think the answer is yes. I don't think you can put all the pieces together based on just the information in these 5 episodes. Now, as I say this, Bagga, back when we did our podcast about episode 3, you said a bunch of things in that podcast, but a good number of them were actually correct. You were saying things that, oh yeah, that's actually what's happening. Or you would make a supposition and it was the right move. So the show is being fair in pointing you to the right place. I still think there are just a couple of things that need to come to light, or at least hint at them subtly enough for audience members to truly be able to solve it. I think anybody could probably make a guess, like just throw out a name, and sure, there's, that's like throwing at a dartboard. You could possibly hit the right one. But even though they've given out a lot of stuff, and I think we're getting close to that point where an audience can put it together. So far, I don't think, at least on this In the Woods case, anybody can put together exactly who, what, and why Katy Devlin was murdered.
If I re-listened to episode 3, would I be able to work it out now, do you think?
That's a good question. I don't think so. But I think at the end of the season, I think you'll be able to listen to, and you'll say, oh yeah, I was right there. Oh yeah, that was what was happening there. So good job.
All along. Yeah, I don't think, look, I'm sure at this stage, the murderer or murderers have been revealed. So it's somebody that we've seen, or we know at least.
Bagga, you are hitting up one of my murder mystery rules. In one of the first podcasts about Dublin murders, I talked about, I think you have to have certain things. You have to play fair. The clues have to be out there. You can't add something at the end, a shocking reveal at the end that wasn't set up earlier. And one of my murder mystery rules, just for me personally, is that you can't have the reveal be a character who hasn't been there all along. Like, we can't get to the end of this season and, it was this random guy who's been going through town killing people from town to town. He has no connection to anybody. I bring this up because some murder mysteries don't follow that rule. They introduce the killer or killers later on in the story. And, this is a big spoiler for a decade ago TV show, but if anybody watched that first season of Veronica Mars, it was such a good season. But as the murder mystery whodunit fan that I am, I was a bit upset that the person they ended up revealing to be the killer, this character wasn't in the first 5 episodes at all. And almost wasn't even hinted at all. Like, they didn't exist, and then they show up in episode 5, and then at the end, they're the killer. And I see that, and I think to myself, they didn't know who the killer was. This person, we could twist it like this. And so they made it up as they went along rather than at the beginning knowing who the killer is so that the clues are there that you can solve them. If I've watched 5 hours of a show and I can't solve it because of among any things, you haven't even introduced me to the actual guilty party, that is wrong by me. And so I will say that if the show is following the book, we have met these people. That's all I'll say.
Yes, I totally agree with you there. My mother used to love watching Murder, She Wrote. Mm-hmm. And I used to hate it for the particular reason that the amount of times I'd be trying to guess because, I had to watch something. It was back before we had lots of channels and we only had one TV and, I was young and everything. So yeah. I used to try to work it out. And then, 10 minutes before the reveal, she would reveal that she's sent off this letter to somebody who's written back and said that blah, blah, blah had happened and blah, blah, blah had happened. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why this person did it. Well, how was I supposed to guess that? So, yeah, I just couldn't stand it. I need to have a chance at trying to work out who it is. Even if I get it totally wrong, if you can get to the end and they say who it is and you've got a chance to rewatch it and say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, now I know what they're talking about. Yeah, that's great. But if they give you an ending and then you go back and you get to the end and you're still saying, but it doesn't make sense. There was no reason for that person to do it. Mm-hmm. That usually means I'm never going to watch that show again.
Yeah, this show, I think we're safe, at least in this In the Woods case. We really, as I keep saying, we haven't gotten too deep into the likeness case. But at the very beginning of this episode, here in the States, even before it begins, it comes up with a rating system. This following program is rated TVMA, mature audiences. And it says it's adult content, adult language. I'm like, fine. Graphic violence, rape. And I see the word rape in the listing, and I suddenly think to myself, ooh, is this something I'm going to watch? And so we've talked about 1985, about Adam seeing Carl and Jonathan flirting and doing their jailbait routine with young Margaret. Then we end the episode with Adam/Rob having it feels like a breakthrough in that, oh, wait a minute, the three of us saw Sandra Scully get raped by these three idiots, these three evil bastards. Carl, seemingly the worst devil ever. Jonathan, the person who's too weak and allows this to happen to his girlfriend. And then Shane, who seems completely like a good guy, but too weak to stop it too. And, oh my God, is that terrible.
And it also appears that she sees the kids too.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're hiding, and it's like she's almost pleading for them to help. Carl is chasing the kids through the forest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at first my thought was, he must have seen them, he's after them. And then I thought, could this be, like, later on? Is it not connected to the rape? It's a memory that Rob's got that while he's holding onto the tree. He remembers the rape and that, and then he remembers being chased by Carl. But if it was about the rape, surely all three of the guys would be chasing after them and not just Carl. So that I was a bit up in the air about what that actually meant.
Right. It reads to me like it was, like sometime after this Carl realizes that these kids saw him and so he's chasing them. But you're right. Where did the other two go? Seemingly, possibly, what happened is Rob lost track of his friends because they were all running away and he lost them. But he seems to have always said, I've had hours disappear. So, yeah, oh my Lord, truly, truly terrible. And that scene and that memory might certainly explain why Dickweed Detective Rob is so determined to pin this on Carl. You know, I mean, he would plant evidence, which it feels like the next thing that's going to happen if he could. He's so desperate to get somebody to say, Carl is the guy hanging out in the woods. He's the guy in the French blue tracksuit. Rob is so determined to have this happen, possibly because it would kill two birds with one stone. It would solve the Katy Devlin case, but it would also solve his 1985 case that has haunted him his whole life.
Exactly. The thing I was thinking about the most was, we already know that the three kids went into the forest. They got off their bikes and ran in the forest. Mm-hmm. Adam got left behind. He's running and he's saying, where have you gone? Where have you gone? And that's where we assume the other two went missing. Now, this is another time.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yeah.
Was it connected to what we saw originally? If so, he wouldn't have stopped and said where everyone is because he'd know that Carl was still running after him. So I got a bit confused with that, to be honest.
Well, I think perhaps what the show is trying to do is leave us in a confused state that Rob is. Rob can't remember what happened to him when he was Adam on this night, and things kind of blend together. And you're right, we don't have any clear timeline of what day, what happened, anything, possibly because once again the show is trying to put us into the role that the novel did, where we're very much trapped in what Rob knows, what Rob remembers, that kind of stuff.
It's certainly confusing me, I'll have to admit that.
Looking at this show as a whole, it keeps having these almost, I want to call them Twin Peaks / supernatural moments. We had all those moments with the wolf. In this episode, the lights are flickering, just like they did in the very first episode of Twin Peaks way back in 1989, and Rob is almost having visions. He's having visions of these thorny vines going down his hand. Fact and fiction are blending together even when he's awake.
Exactly. And another interesting thing is that I actually looked up on Google. I know it's against the right thing, but I did anyway. And there is no record of wolves ever living in Ireland at all.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, but where are these wolves coming from? It seems strange. Are they saying that maybe there were a few, or are they saying that they're there because of something else? Like He Rises creature thing?
Yes.
On about?
No, that's a great, great thought, great question. Who knows if we'll ever get the answer? Even though we saw Dr. Mark Hanley again, he came by, so he'll give some offerings to the king.
Actually, that's the first time he was actually all right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was.
I'll Bob off for being too mean to Damien. Is it Damien?
Yeah, Damien Donnelly, the young archaeology student. Rob is so desperate to pin it on Call that he is trying to brainwash this poor kid into saying, that's the person, right? That's the person, right? And this Dr. Mark Hanley, who I keep mocking, don't call him Mr., it's Doctor. You're right. That's the only time he comes across as like, okay, this guy's actually not bad.
And not only does he say that he knows that it was bad, that he knows that Rob must know that it was bad.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Rob is certainly losing the plot. Without Cassie there to keep him in line, I think he's in real trouble.
He is in real trouble. That is, we don't need to put spoiler alert on it. That is what we're seeing. Now, the episode begins. I keep saying that he's trying to pin the blame on this Cahill Mills. And one of the things he does is he goes to the ballet teacher, Simone Cameron, and he shows her a picture of Cahill. And he's like, have you ever seen this guy? You seen this guy loitering around the dance studio? And, of course, she says no. Rob, and then they talk about Rosalind for a bit, but it actually seems to focus on possibly another suspect moving to the front, and that's Margaret Devlin. Rob asks, Mrs. Devlin is ill, isn't she? And Simone answers, is she? And so, oh boy, to me, in everything we've seen, it looks like this woman's ill, but is it really she's just medicated and loopy from all these drugs?
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I was watching it, and when we saw her a bit later, and when her husband says, I got your medication, you're the reason why I have to take it.
Oh, snap.
That doesn't sound too good to me.
No, it doesn't sound good to me at all either.
And then, of course, when she, as we talked about before, when she confronts Rosalind in the shower and walks into the shower under the shower head, getting wet and everything.
Oh, my God.
I never wanted you. She walks off like, oh, that's a good message for Mum.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.
Must remember the Mother's Day card for that. Yeah.
Well, Margaret Devlin is going on her Drop the Mic tour. Are you the reason why I have to take all these damn drugs? I never wanted you. Mic drop. What she doesn't drop a mic on is when Rob goes out to see her. And Rob is, like I said, he's being wrong in all these. So he's like, I want to know, what happened in 85. And Margaret seems like she's frigging programmed. Her response of, my family went to see Police Academy 2. I went out to get popcorn. That's when I saw Shane, Carl, and Jonathan. Like, she is nuts. And so Rob is saying, no, I want to know where you were when they asked you to lie. But she doesn't change that story. She doesn't change her robotic programming. She was at the theater, and she saw them there.
Just for a second, I really thought she was going to change.
She bites her lip and draws blood. Whoa.
Bit of lip, and I thought, oh, my God, she's going to say something. And then she just came out with the same story again. After he left, she felt the blood on the lip, and I thought, well, there's obviously more to it than what she's saying.
You think? You think? Oh, my God. I mean, when she came into the shower, she needed a knife so she could reenact Psycho. I mean, she's crazy.
It wouldn't have surprised me if she had have done it, because she totally looks crazy to me. And it was set up with the curtain there, and you could have the shadow going up and then the knife, and yeah, it was perfectly set up for it. But I don't know how poor old Rosalind is managing in that little caravan looking after Mum and Jess. So it'd be pretty tough on her.
Right. Well, we see how she acts out in a bit, and we'll get to that in a bit. I want to double back. So Mama Devlin, Margaret Devlin, seems to be, she's like, oh, wait a minute, my husband's getting all the creepy scenes and looking like a prime suspect? I want to look like a suspect. Now, Rob has brought in Call and Jonathan and put them in separate rooms, but he doesn't have that security blanket. He doesn't have that Jiminy Cricket, that voice in him helping him because Cassie's not there. He instead brings in Officer Phelan, Garda Phelan.
Man crush.
Man crush. Hashtag man crush. And he is going crazy. Where were you on the night? We were at the theater. Where were you at the night? Like, he's going to keep asking them until he tells them. He's trying to just break them. He asked Jonathan, Jonathan married his alibi. He's like, why did you have a sexual relationship with your alibi? Oh, damn. Oh, this is terrible.
I thought it was strange that he did take his man crush in there with him. I mean, surely he would have taken Quigley or...
Right.
It seemed like a strange choice to take someone who's not experienced at doing something like that. It's such a big case.
Right. Well, he doesn't have anybody. He needs Cassie, but their relationship is not doing too well in this episode, is it?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an ex where it ended this bad? And it's all Rob's fault. It is all Rob's fault why it ended this bad. But my Lord.
I think Sam is about the only one that's ever had a relationship finish this bad.
Oh, poor Sam. We'll get to him when we get to the likeness stuff. Yeah, he's not doing too well. Rob is so terrible. Like, when Cassie comes in to announce she's leaving the murder squad to go back work undercover again, Rob is like, let's put a decent face on this, shall we? Oh, Silver Tongue Rob, way to go.
And that's not the first time that somebody's sort of been waiting outside the lifts for somebody to turn up, is it?
Right. Eventually somebody's going to cold cock Rob. He is asking for it.
I was thinking that actually when Sam and Quigley were going through, and at that stage Sam had already worked out that Rob and Cassie had done it, so to speak.
Right.
Actually thought for a moment that he was going to just let one punch go, but he held back. Rob is not his normal self, I think you'd say.
No, I hope not.
Quigley still thinks it's all a joke and still making jokes about Rob and can't be doing it anymore.
I know, in front of Sam. Is he crazy?
Well, I mean, he's all the way through the show, he's been saying that Rob and Cassie have been at it. And Cassie even told Sam, that Quigley will say that Rob and I have been at it, and Sam said, yeah, he's already said that. So for once, Quigley was actually correct, but he doesn't even know it. And he says it to the wrong source.
Of course. So let's finish up with the Devlins, because we once again spent a lot of time with them. Rob has given a phone. Once again, this seems incredibly inappropriate. Gave a phone to their 18-year-old daughter and said, hey, don't tell anybody, call me. Because of, theoretically, she gets freaked out by her mom, maybe ties into this some. We're like, well, how does Rosalind act out, having to put up and handle all these people? She acts out by dressing up like she's going to a damn club. She lost those Quaker clothes, and she discovered a credit card. Holy smokes, Rosalind aged up real good.
Yeah, where did she get the clothes from? Did she just go out and buy them or something? It just seemed...
She's drinking wine. She's got makeup on, earrings. Hello. She's ready for clubbing.
Yeah.
Clubbing at the caravans.
Yes. I heard they had a good disco there on a Friday night, apparently.
Oh, yes. And then, and I thought this was a great moment / terrible moment. She tries to kiss Rob, and he's like, no, not at all, not at all, whatever he says. And then she goes, I thought that's why you asked me about boyfriends and gave me the phone. Oh Rob, you freaking idiot.
Oh, now she knows how Sam feels, I think. Interesting thing I thought at the time after Rob gave her the phone was that young Katy had a phone a secret phone as well.
Mm-hmm, exactly right. She did. Theoretically, we've been told, I'm pretty sure, it was given to her by Simone, the ballet teacher.
Yeah. It's interesting that they both have hidden phones. I can't see how that can be a connection there, but it just seems weird.
No, it does. I agree.
I really have. We haven't even got into the Cassie situation, but I really have no idea which way this is going to go, except all I can say is it's not looking good for Rob.
You know what? Record that and just put it in a soundboard, because you're going to want to press that button and sound a lot more. I was thinking that, sometimes you watch a show and you're like, well, why is this here? Why is this here? And I thought perhaps because Rob had been so terrible to Cassie that when Rosalind was making this move, this was to show, Rob has learned and he's not going to be an a-hole around this young girl. And he was better than he was with Cassie, but he wasn't exactly, he's got no bedside manner, this guy, at this stage in his life.
No. Obviously, well, not obviously, but maybe all the issues in his past, was it post-stress disorder, what is it?
Yeah, post-trauma stress disorder. Isn't that PTSD, post-trauma stress? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, maybe that's something to do with it. I must admit, when he totally blew off Cassie the way he did, and even when he said that I just pretend it was Lexie that had sex with him, that would have hurt, to say that.
Oh, yes.
Who was basically his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
He just more or less stabbed her in the way he said it. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. I thought he is just being terrible the whole way through, but to somebody he obviously cares about like Cassie, it's not cool. But he's got issues coming at him left and right. Jamie's mom. So once again, the three kids went into the woods. Adam, who became Rob, and then Peter and Jamie. Peter and Jamie never showed up again. And so Jamie's mom, Alicia Rowan, now she's talking to a reporter and saying, hey, look into Adam. Whoever killed Katy grew up there, knew the woods. And she's like, who does that? Adam. Adam killed them, she says, because Adam entered the woods and came out without a mark on him. Children can be brutal to each other. Oh, ask Adam. And then when Chief Varys comes in and needs to read this guy the riot act, as he should, Rob goes even worse and makes up a complete fabricated lie that Adam died in a car wreck in Australia. Oh, my God.
Yeah, well, that lie is not going to last long, is it? Because
no.
Eventually, somebody's going to want some paperwork from New Zealand, especially Chief Varys, to show the press that, Adam is dead. Rob's got to do things in a hurry if he's going to find out who's... I'm not even sure if he's still interested in finding out who killed Katy or whether he just wants to find out what happened in 1985.
That is a very observant point. Katy is he's using Katy as a conduit to 85. Now, admittedly, she might be, but you're right. He doesn't, at this point, it doesn't feel like he cares. Even though when he was trying to kind of bond with Rosalind's like, I don't know who I am anymore without my sister. I've been left behind. He's trying to bond with her, and he says, I've been left behind. I've been left behind. And that's why, I want answers. That's how I'm going to help find who did this to your sister. But that seems to be the only time he even displays any true caring about what did happen to Katy. That's a great point.
Yeah, he's even then he says that he wants to, can't remember what he says, something like he wants to find out who did things and stuff like that. But to me, he just seems to be so sure that everything is connected between Katy and the 1985 thing. And, to be honest, from what we're seeing, I don't even think that they are connected. I think it could be two completely different things.
It certainly could be. Rob, the one positive, we'll say, the only probably positive thing that happened to Rob all night long, I think, happened at the end, where it seems like he's breaking down. He realizes he's messed up as messed up can be. He goes to Cassie's flat to find her, to probably apologize to whatever. He calls her phone, and of course, she's not there. She doesn't even have the phone because she's undercover. And so Rob is turning to get help, but the person he's turning to can't help him back and probably wouldn't based on how terrible he's been. And so play your soundboard again. What did you do? What is the famous phrase? I'm worried about Rob.
I did write down what he said. He said on the answering machine that he gets eventually, he said, Cassie, come back. Please come back. I've something to tell you. And then he says, it's Rob. Like, I think she would have guessed it was Rob.
Right.
Is the thing that he's got something to tell her? Is it
Mm-hmm.
that he does really love her, or he's sorry that he said what he said, or has he remembered something about the night? Yeah, I suppose we'll find out next week.
Yeah, that is the $64,000 question. But the fact that he's turning to his rock, his security blanket, his soulmate, even if it shouldn't be romantic, I think is a good move for him. But he's in not a good shape. And to people who are thinking, well, Bubba, why do you love this book so much? I love murder mysteries, but this has this added thing on top of it, which for some people may not be fun to read, about this cop completely breaking down. But that adds another layer to the novel, and that's one of the reasons why I loved it so much.
Yeah, I can understand that because the book is told through his view. And if he is breaking down, that means he's unreliable in what he's saying, which is much more interesting to read because you're never really sure if what he's saying is the truth or what he thinks is the truth.
That's exactly right. Now, is there anything else you want to talk about this Katy Devlin / In the Woods case, or are you ready to down the imaginary overpass freeway for a bit to the likeness case?
Let's go to likeness.
Now, this is fun for me, Bagga, because I haven't read this book. I knew the basic setup, and so I'm going to start trying to guess and see if I can solve this as well. And just based on what we've seen so far, I really don't have any good guess except whoever stabbed and killed this imposter Lexie, I think it has to be one of the 4 people living in this house. We barely even know them, but because they seem to be the only people we do know, and admittedly that's not true, there is the phone call, which you correctly predicted, that has been coming from the person attacking and leaving threatening messages on Jonathan Devlin's phone. So he could be a 5th suspect, but to me it feels like it has to be one of these 4.
Yeah, after this episode, it has to be one of the 4 because there isn't enough time to bring in somebody new and then set it up for that person to be the person who stabbed Lexie. Well, all 4 of them are suspicious, of course.
Mm-hmm.
As I actually have no idea. I mean, Abigail loves Daniel, but Cassie thinks that Abigail and Lexie might have something going, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Let's just talk about the 4 of them. And it's hard to even remember their names. So we have Rafi. He is the one who, I don't know how to say it. He has darker skin, and he used to do cocaine, and he's got rich parents who own hotel chains. So there's him. There's Daniel, who brought them all together, brought this kind of group of 4 together to live in this house. There's Justin. Now, what's interesting about Justin is when Frank is telling him this story about, Lexie's okay, but she's speaking gibberish. Do you guys know, did she have any sexual partners? Justin says, if she was seeing someone, she would have told us. So, Then there's Abigail, who her mom is slightly insane, but Abigail seems to be the only one who knew that, or who Cassie believes knew that imitation Lexie was pregnant, which feels like a very important thing.
And Frank points out in the photo of them that Abigail is looking lovingly at Daniel, but he's looking lovingly at Lexie.
Right.
Surely it couldn't just be as simple as Abigail jealous of Lexie and killed her.
You would assume so, but the fact that it's an imitation Lexie is what makes it even odder. So not only do we have to solve who killed her, but we have to solve why she was pretending to be this fake person.
and she does get that phone call from the strange guy who says, are we still on?
Right.
And we don't know what that's about yet.
Have you said anything about me, our thing? Oh, boy.
I would have been saying, can you just remind me what that was again?
Now, a couple of things that really struck me as crazy. Do you really have to do this? If you're undercover, do you really have to get tattoos? Do you have to get, getting a haircut, it'll grow back out. Getting your nose pierced, that doesn't freak me out. But the fact that Cassie is getting a tattoo so she can truly be this imitation Lexie, what the hell? Come on, man. Just wear a bandage over it and said, I got injured there. What's going on?
I have got tattoos on my arms. For her to get a tattoo and for them to I assume the next day go to see everyone, everyone would know it'd just been done because where the tattoo is, it goes all red and quite often bruises, and that can last for a week or even longer.
Oh, so, my Lord.
Even just a ring like that, it would be so red, and you have to put cream on it, like 3 times a day and all that sort of stuff so it doesn't get infected and all that sort of stuff. I mean, obviously it'd be a bit boring if they had to show her doing all that, but it just didn't seem right to have her actually get a real tattoo because it wouldn't have been healed in time for her to go back with her friends. And then, of course, the other thing is she's watching a video about Lexie that they must have got from the house when they were looking through the house. And all we ever see is the one line where Lexie says, "We're all going to die," or something like that. And it seems like she's based her whole performance of Lexie on that one line.
Right. Well, that I don't blame. I've based my whole Schwarzenegger impression on his one line. "Get in the chopper." I'm kidding. No, you're right. How is she really going to pull this off? Now, she does seem to be an identical twin to this imaginary Lexie, but still, ooh.
Yeah, and it's all very well to know where all the kitchenware is and all that sort of stuff, but what if somebody says, "Oh, what about what we were talking about, Tuesday?" You're
going to suddenly get very good at giving one-word answers. Do you remember what we talked about on Tuesday? Uh-huh. How do you feel about it? Same. What? Lexie, you're not much of a conversationalist. No.
Yeah, she'll play the I'm having trouble remembering card.
I lost a lot of blood to my brain, so I can't remember.
Of course, it's almost like, I hate to bring this up, but somebody that I know likes to watch The Bold and the Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Not me, someone else. And I won't name names, but she lives in this house.
Okay.
For Lexie to be almost dead when they first go see her and they're not sure she's going to pull through, to ready to come home very shortly after, seemed a bit rushed.
Well, you bringing up this point about the tattoos, to me it means we need to pull Frank out of there, get you in there. You need to be in charge of undercover, because Frank, he enjoys it too well. Remember how happy he was when he was like, "Oh man, I love tricking these kids." Frank, boy. No wonder Chief Varys hates your ass.
Yeah, he thinks he's top dog for sure. And he could be the downfall to Cassie, because I could see this not ending well for her, because if one of those 4, well, I assume one of those 4 is the killer of Lexie, then why wouldn't they do it again?
Exactly right.
In the first place. So surely they would find a time when maybe she's sleeping or something and just go in and kill her again.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, come on. Now, just like Rob is haunted, I think we do have to point out that Rob is haunted by what happened to him when he was a kid. Guess who else is haunted? Our girl Cassie. She is getting a tattoo. She's getting her nose pierced. She's getting her hair done. While this is happening, she does have those little flashes back to the night her parents died in that car wreck, in that she stumbled out of the car and she made this imaginary dream friend, Lexie. Ooh.
Yeah. Without going to check to see if her mum and dad was actually still alive or not, but we'll let that go. Maybe they were really badly broken up or something. But yeah, it must be weird like, she invented this Lexie, and then this woman who looks exactly like her and is using the name and everything, dead. I mean, that would be a real shock to the system.
That's true. But these identical twins, you do only tend to see that on these soap operas, and many of our listeners are upset you didn't mention Neighbors as the soap opera you watch instead of Bold and the Beautiful, but that's fine.
Well, Neighbours, they're about 3 years behind in working out these sorts of plots. So I'll get there one day.
Okay. That's what we need. We need these neighbors to stop looking like each other.
One of my favourite things on these soap operas is when they say, Father Peter is now played by John Smith.
Oh, yes, exactly right. Exactly. Now, once again, we are just dipping our toes into the likeness. Are you intrigued? Do you have any thought, or is it still too early? It's way too early for me.
It's too early, but I'm worried that the likeness itself is, like a full book. And they're going to squeeze it into three half episodes or 4 half episodes. I'm not sure how many we've got to go.
Right. There's a chance we only have 3 left. And so, or are they going to leave it as a cliffhanger and we learn some things in a possible second season?
Oh, yeah. Well, see, I hadn't thought of that.
Well, I hadn't thought of it too much either because I don't want them to do it. Give us the answers now.
Yes. And same with Rob. Maybe they won't tell us what's happening.
Well, I know that once again, people who saw this already, it's already aired over in the United Kingdom. Some of them did have a problem with the ending. So I don't want to, I don't know what that ending is, but we will have to see.
We'll talk about that when it happens.
Exactly right.
I'm worried that there must be a lot of the book that is going to be cut out if they're going to solve it this season.
You would assume so, but there's a chance, and they're giving way more time to this Katy Devlin murder case, but there's a chance that these books, because they are kind of told from a certain perspective, that if a lot of the novelists just thought somebody has in their head, you could strip it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could strip it to bare bones and possibly do it in these final 3 episodes. We're going to have to see.
I don't know. It's a tough one because basically from here on in, we're going to have to try to get to know these 4 other people and work out which one or maybe even which 2 are responsible for killing Lexie. And surely they'd know that they killed her.
Yeah, you would think if you stab somebody in the heart, isn't that how Lexie died? And it's not just that they stabbed her in the heart, but they went back and whoever it was, doesn't it sound like they took some soap and detergent out to the blood-stained tree and tried to clean the tree of evidence? Oy.
Yeah, they moved her. And another thing I'd like to point out, they moved her to a ruin, which I'd have to say would have to be the only ruin in all of England that hasn't been converted into a nice little home that on Grand Designs and all those shows, because there seems to be a hell of a lot of those that do get converted into things, but maybe they built the ruin themselves just for that scene.
Yeah, more likely that's what this freeway's about. They're like, listen, let's build a freeway so we can get off here at the ruin, turn it into a tourist trap.
That is the interesting thing about the freeway that a few people have mentioned. Why is the freeway being built? Where's it going?
Exactly.
The whole point of it. Because it seems to be going from basically nowhere to nowhere.
Yes, but it's nonstop.
It saves time if you want to go from one to the other.
Right. Think of the time you'll save going to between 2 places you don't go to.
Exactly. Yeah. I wonder if it'll be a toll road as well.
You know, jumping back to the In the Woods case for a second, Chief Varys, he really did have a great point about, Rob, you're going to base your case around Shane, this seemingly nut job, or guy who's suffering through some troubles?
An unreliable witness in any court case.
Right.
That is a big problem because, I mean, it's all very well to say, oh, Carl did it and here's the proof, Shane says so. But then it's got to go to court.
It would not hold up in court. Give me a break.
No, Shane wouldn't have a clue what he was saying or doing or anything. Yeah, I understand Chief Varys being so worried about it. But he has fallen for things that Rob has said. Like when he said that Carl is into kiddie porn and it's on his computers or something, and he does tend to just believe what he wants to believe, I think.
Without question. Somebody... Play your sound again. Rob's in trouble. Well, listeners... Very good. Everybody record that. Play it to yourself during the week until the next podcast is out. We love it. Listeners, we're going to end this episode of Irish Crack the way we end every episode of Irish Crack. And that's where we talk about some Irish slang, educate ourselves on some Irish slang. And I got a couple that I looked up, Bagga, to try to explain what you would say to Rob being so terrible. And so...
How about you give one to me, and then I'll try to work out what it is first before you tell me what...
Sure. Well, I don't think it's going to be too hard to figure out what this one is. There's an Irish slang that says, acting the maggot.
Acting the maggot? Well, that's obviously acting like a bad person, something like that, or an even worse way of saying it?
That's pretty much it. It's somebody who's being obnoxious. You're acting the maggot. And Rob, in this episode, oh boy, he's acting the maggot for two. Right, Cassie's not there, so he's got to do it for both of them.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Do you have any Irish slang you want to throw at me?
No, I have enough trouble trying to keep up with the show to think of any Irish slang, I'm afraid.
Well, listeners, if you have some thoughts on some Irish slang, what's happening with the likeness case and Cassie and her doppelganger imitation Lexie, if you have some thoughts on our Double D Detective Dickweed Rob and what he's doing, and is he right, is he wrong, is anybody right in this case, please join us at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, facebook.com/Double PHQ.
Is Lexie the bad doppelganger of Cassie, or is it the other way around?
Oh boy, that is a great thought. Listeners, if you have some thoughts, I don't want to say anything. I haven't read that likeness, but I would think that's Cassie, who's done some wrong things herself. Ooh, we will have to see. Ooh.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Depends what Lexie was up to, because she's already got that phone call saying, are we still on? So she's obviously was up to something that no one else seems to know about.
Correct.
I think it's going to be a tense week waiting to watch the next one.
Well, that's what they want. They want us all to suffer.
And they're doing a good job of it.
For everybody here at the Double P Media, my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
My name's Bagga, and you can get me at Bagga, BAGGA 2007.
And you'll hear us next time when we dig deeper into Irish Crack.